Dear friends, I warmly welcome you to our interactive program for youth and adults, IPYA. The theme of our interaction is sex denial in marriage. My spouse sometimes denies me sex, and I am not pleased about it. Under what circumstances can a man or woman legitimately deny sex to one's spouse? The big question is it a sin to deny sex to one's spouse? Our speakers today are Very Reverend Father Julius Olaito, Mrs. Ogechi Okafor Onyebuchibe, Mr. Callistus Okafor Onyebuchibe, Mrs. Martina Ozegbe, Mr. Timothy Ozegbe. The host and moderator of this interaction is Reverend Father Oscar John Obi. Welcome, dear speakers. So welcome. The first question I want to ask is, what is your understanding of sex? Because people see sex from different perspectives. So we want to lay a foundation of what our speakers think about sex before we can now go into other discussion. So please, I want to start with Mr. Timothy. In 3 minutes, what is your understanding of sex?
Thank you so much, Father, and good evening, everybody. Okay, so I want to first of all start from probably the dictionary interpretation or explanation of what sex is, what is sexual intercourse, which is a sexual activity which involves insertion and thrusting of the male penis into the vagina of a woman for sexual pleasure or reproduction. And I mean, that clearly tells us we are talking about sex here, meaning a male and female. And it clearly puts us in the understanding that we are talking what the church believes in, which is the fact that sex has to be between a male and a female. But the church further tells us and explains to us that it has to be within the context of marriage. Jesus Christ reveals to us the truths about marriage by referring us to the back to creation text of Genesis chapter 1 verse 27, where it said that so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And he went further in Genesis chapter 2 verse 24 to talk about the union, that indissoluble union between the man and the woman, which is marriage. And he said that therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and cleaves to his wife, and they become one flesh. So here we have been told from Genesis that the man and the woman will become one flesh as husband and wife. And the way God has designed sex, He designed it in such a way that it's good, it's exciting, it's intoxicating, it's powerful, and it can be unifying because it brings so much harmony between the spouses. But like we know that the Bible is not a book on sex, but it contains a complete theology of sexuality, the purposes of sex, the warnings against its misuse, and the beautiful picture of ideal physical intimacy that's set forth.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, Mrs. Martina. You have 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Okay. So, my husband has done, a lot of explanation. So, talking about the one flesh relationship as we see in Genesis 2:24, which is the most intense physical intimacy and the deepest spiritual unity possible between a husband and a wife. God approves of this relationship in which the husband and wife meet each other's physical needs in sexual intercourse. We see that in Proverbs 5:18-20. I know I like this definition of Pope John Paul. He says, Pope John Paul II says that sex is a unique form of language. Sex is a body language. The human body speaks. It has a language of its own. Therefore, sex, a bodily activity, has a language. Sex speaks the language of sensual pleasure. There can be no doubt about this. But it also speaks a spiritual language. That is the language of love. By touching each other, listening to each other, looking into each other's eyes, and rediscovering each other, receiving and giving each other, the woman and the man, they both communicate in a very intimate way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mrs. Ogechi. Please, you have 3 minutes. Welcome. Good evening. Yes.
Good evening.
What is your personal understanding of sex?
Okay. Good evening, Father. Good evening, everybody. I think I'll just briefly say that, in my opinion or what I understand, and I'll speak in the context of the church. Sex is a communication between a man and woman, intimately, where they profess their love, as in for each other, remembering that Christ is at the center of that love, because God is love, and so when you show love to one another, you're also extending the love of Christ to both the man and the woman between each other. That's the simplified definition of sex out.
Thank you. Mr. Callistus, please.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for the opportunity to be here. I'll just simply say, sex is like the icing on the cake. Taking the icing alone makes no sense. It might even be poisonous and too sweet. But when you eat it together with the cake, it sweetens it. So it's just an aspect of the entire marriage that reflects marriage in a sweeter, more intimate sense, so to speak. So it's an integral part of the marital act. Taken outside of marriage makes no sense. But together with the marriage, it completes it and fulfills it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callistus. So the second question is, whose responsibility it is to initiate sex activity in marriage, the man or the woman? Mr. Callistus.
So, I would say it this way. It's like a dance, right? So we are communicating with each other. It's not necessarily the responsibility of one person, but two people share, the responsibility of communicating to each other. So, how would I put it now? In the marriage, the man has a responsibility to pursue his bride, and the woman has instead of responsibility, let's use obligation, has an obligation to pursue his bride, and then the woman has an obligation to be receptive to that pursuit, and respond to that pursuit, to be receptive and respond to that pursuit. So you can neither put the responsibility on one party or the other, but rather together, you understand, they contribute to the complete manifestation of that intimacy, that is the sexual act, so to speak.
Okay,
So
Mrs.
it's a communication. You can't say whose responsibility it is to speak, because without both parties speaking, there's no communication. If just one party is speaking, it's soliloquy. But for dialogue to occur, it has to be I speak and I get a feedback and response.
But even in speaking, someone has to start.
Someone has to start. The man is the leader, and he has to lead the way.
Okay.
The man is the leader, he has to lead the way.
Okay.
So avoid putting it into a box. It is usually the man's obligation to pursue his bride, like I said. That's the indication even songs of Solomon give us. It's the nature of the sexes also. That is why we propose. You won't expect the woman to propose. It's why we initiate the conversation. I will have to ask my wife out. She will say yes, and then we'll start the process. So it's that same chain of communication. The man usually should initiate, but that doesn't prevent the wife from giving. Okay, let me put it this way. How do we initiate contact? I'm looking at a woman from across the table. She looks back at me and smiles. I have initiated the looking. She has responded by smiling at me, giving me the heart and the mind to continue to pursue. So if we're asking who starts the conversation, yes, it should be the man's obligation to initiate or to start the conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
Bearing in mind that it happens every time.
Thank you, Mr. Callistus. Okay, Mrs. Martina, what is your take on this matter?
Okay. Well, either the man or the woman can initiate sex. Now, studies have shown that when both parties initiate sex equally, or the woman initiates sex, it usually results in a greater sexual satisfaction. So I would come in with our own reality, the two of us now. So just like Callistus has said about, you see the woman, there's a communication, something is going on, and then it leads to something. But my husband would joyfully tell you that moment when I come to him, give him cut eye and everything and all that, those are our best moments. Those are his best moments and our best moments of our sexual relationship. So I think when the women initiate sex, it excites the men too, and it makes lovemaking more fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Ogechi, what's your take on this?
I would say I think the African mentality is that the man should initiate sex. That's the belief some of us grew up with. But in reality, I don't think it should be the duty of one person, because I feel you are in the marriage, so you can't put that responsibility on just the man, really, because some days the man might want to pursue. There are other days that maybe he's tired, he's exhausted from work, and you're expecting him to come and nothing will happen. So I think it's both ways. The man or the woman can initiate sex. I don't think it falls on one person.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ogechi. Mr. Timothy, what's your take on this?
I think Martina just expressed it in full, because the reality is this. When I am interested, I'm right from work, I start to lay the background. I start to clear the road. So the discussions, the conversations from in the beginning of the day will be turning towards explaining or saying what my interest is, even without saying it. Conversations from by the time I get home at night, she's already gotten the signal, and when she shakes it, like you said, when always the best of it. And when she's not in the mood, and I keep pushing and pushing, that it never works best. But when she initiates, it's always the best. But however, the fact that I already gave indications of it earlier in the day also helps a lot of us to have intention. So that helps us to keep both of us to initiate it also helps together because we already have our mindset towards it.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, the next question I want to ask, how does a woman or a man cope with an unromantic partner? Mr. Callistus, how does a man or woman cope with an unromantic partner? And what is the way out?
So, Father, I'll start by protesting here. Whenever you ask the difficult questions, I confess. I think it's directed towards my more experienced colleagues. I would have a problem with the definition of the word romantic because, I mean, if I'm very sure that if that word is defined in common parlance, I would even fall into the category of unromantic. So you can see my wife is agreeing with that. So I think marriage is more rooted in commitment than anything else. I think it's more rooted in commitment than anything else. And commitment, is the foundation upon which, every relationship grows. Because as long as you know that somebody is there with you for the journey, then you would always be comfortable taking another step forward. You understand? So I think for someone dealing with an unromantic partner who desires more romance in the marriage, let me put it that way, for someone who desires more romance in the marriage and isn't getting it, I think the first thing is you assure your partner of your commitment towards the marriage. You understand that this is a difficulty, but I'm willing to go the distance with you. Let's work together to achieve what we're trying to achieve. That is number one. Number two, you communicate your desires to the person. Because the person might not even be aware, you understand, that there's something you need, you understand, that he or she lacks. So communicate that to the person in a loving manner, not in a judgmental tone that you is useless man. You cannot even buy me flowers. You understand? More or less, like the way we were taught, start by giving the person some words of affirmation. Okay, this is what you are doing right. You take out the trash, you help me wash plates, but this is something else I would like you to do for me. Sometimes when I want to talk intimately, I would like you to respond to. It's a gradual process. Just try and we'll see how it goes from there. That kind of thing.
Okay.
So commitment first, communication next, and I think eventually everything falls into place.
Thank you. Mrs. Martina, what is your take on this?
So for me, I'll say the first step is a dialogue, which in most cases will reveal the root cause of the romantic behavior. So sometimes, maybe for some women, it's the fear of pregnancy. The woman has had 1, 2, 3, and she's afraid of being pregnant. So the first step is sit together and dialogue, have a conversation and talk, dialogue, talk about the situation, resolve all issues that interfere with your emotions, ask whether there's help from this angle, how can I help to improve, what the situation is, how can I help to enhance what the problem is. Marital harmony can also be enhanced by learning. I would say that marital harmony can be enhanced by learning and using the natural family planning method. Because, like I said, fear of pregnancy could be one of those reasons why the woman may not want to, and then behaves in that manner, while the man is she is avoiding certain things. So if you learn the natural family planning method, you are not afraid because now you know your body, you understand your body. So in all of this, you need to dialogue, you need to discuss and talk with each other to have a better understanding, and so that, dealing with such situations wouldn't be such a thing.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Timothy, you want to add something to that?
Yes. Like you said, root cause analysis. You need to know why. For example, for us as a couple, we have 5 children, and we know what it is in our economy to have extra additional children. So we had to deliberately learn the natural family planning method. And it further exposed us to the fact that the chances of a woman getting pregnant within a cycle is just 5 days. Just 5 days, which throws open almost another 20 plus days available for intercourse. So that makes us to understand that with a proper study and understanding of natural family method, the sexual harmony between us has greatly improved, because it makes us to understand that, okay, it's only within the next period that the chance of being pregnant is there. So the opportunity of having sex over and over again is there. The opportunity without fear of pregnancy, like to give an example before. And also another issue may be the issue of neglect. So for example, I have neglected you for a long time, and there's likelihood that she will draw back. So if I now come and say I'm not touching her, and she will not say, no, don't touch me. Unless I go for the root cause and understand the reason for the behavior, that the automatic behavior, I will not be able to resolve the issues.
All right.
And of course, I must pledge my undoubted resolve to make sure that I make the relationship work and make it better for both of us.
Thank you, Mr. Timothy. Mrs. Ogechi, you may add something to what your husband just said.
I would say that when you have an unromantic spouse, it depends on your definition of what romance is. What romance is to me might be different from what it is for the other person. So based on what our definition of romance is, I know that there are things they call love languages, so it differs. Some people, it might be gifts that works for them. Some people, they like acts of service. So I think it's just identifying what your gifts, what you like, and communicating it to your partner, talking about it. And the truth is not going to it's not something that will get solved in 1 day or 1 year. You can't even put a time limit to it. So I think it's something that you just have to keep working at. And like you said, commitment. Because if you look at the marriage more like it's something you're committed to. So even when the man is unromantic, you find other avenues or you find other ways. That's what I do. If he's not doing this part, I'll say at least he's doing this part. I try to tell myself that at least he's doing, rather than dwell on the one he's not doing, because when you dwell on it, sometimes it can weigh you down. At least he's doing this. So the truth is, no one partner is the same. Some are good in this, and yours is not good in that. But so it depends on how you see it. But if you see it like a responsibility, it becomes a problem, because it's like, oh, it's a cross you have to bear. Or if you see it more like a community, you keep working with it. You both keep working at it every day.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think Father Julius is here now. Father, please, we began by asking the speakers their understanding of sex. From the church perspective, what can you say about sex? Just in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes.
Well, I think I was here when you asked them, and I heard their responses, and they were spot on their responses. Sex is a conjugal act that is ordered to the procreation of to both a unity of the marriage and procreation. It's a language within the relationship that is both natural and spiritual. So it's not just one side, it's everything. If that is missing in a relationship, the partners cannot be spiritual.
Thank you, Father. Okay, the second question, I don't know if you want to add something to what they said before now. Whose responsibility it is to initiate sex activity, the man or the woman?
They are equal in their love and in their relationship. And so anybody can initiate it.
Okay. Thank you, Father. Okay, the last question before I give you time to talk, each speakers. The last question I want to ask is, what does it mean for a spouse to be married but lonely? Mr. Timothy.
Take the question again.
What does it mean for a spouse to be married but lonely?
Okay. Okay. So, what it means is that you can be married, you live in the same house with your wife, but there is disillusionment. The family, if both of you are living in a house like singles, so it's called a married single relationship. Both of you are living in a house and you are living as if there is no relationship between both of you. It's those kind of things that happen when there are issues that are unresolved. So part of it is that issue of feeling of neglect or feeling of when you have issues that you are yet to resolve between spouses, you find yourself living the married single lifestyle by living in the same house, but you hardly have communication with each other. So there'll be lack of communication in the marriage. And when there's lack of communication in marriage, I mean, sex probably is going to be the last thing you want to talk about. All you just find in such a situation that the man just meets his obligation in the home by way of, oh, I'm provided. This is money for this is money for that, and goes his own way. And so does the woman. There's no communication, no affection, nothing. You just live in the home as if you are strangers.
Thank you. Ogechi, Mrs.
Father, I think what you're explaining is married but single. More like you're married but you're single. and like Mr. Timothy said, it's as a result of different things. If you start to name them, there are a lot of them. Unfaithfulness. It could be you can just start assuming it can be anything, or it could be that both the man and woman are afraid of commitment. Maybe they were paired up by their parents, or it can be anything. But when you're married and you're living single, I don't think it's something that anybody wishes to do, because I think it's just torture. Why don't you remain single and just know that you're single, rather than being in a house with somebody that you call a spouse and it's more like you are flatmates. You cannot even talk, or everybody doing their own thing. I know people that stay in separate bedrooms and they're fine. Everybody goes and comes as they like. The man can even keep girlfriends as much as he wants. The woman doesn't care, But I don't think it's normal. That's the truth, because it just means that maybe there's a side of the person's emotion that the person has learned to subdue. You just mentally log off and tell yourself, you know what, I'm not going to bother myself about what this woman does. I'm not going to bother about what the man does. It's something that you consciously subdue and just, how do I put it? Just make yourself not even feel that part of that. Once there's no communication in marriage, you guys are not. I kind of feel that the marriage is just to me, it's ended. You're just waiting for an official to it, because you are not doing anything. As in what's happening in the marriage, you might as well just go your separate ways. But a lot of people live like that in their marriages, and I don't think that's what God intended for for us as married couples.
Thank you. Thank you. Father, please, do you have anything to say on this question, Father, please?
Well, it's not only in marriage that people are lonely. There are people who are lonely in the crowd. Somebody may come to the parish, and the person may just be lonely and alone. In a parish of 500, 1,000 people, the person has got no friend, no body to relate with. The person walks into the church, and the person walks out at the end of the mass, no hello to anybody, the person's gone his way or her way. That happens also in some marriages, lack of communication in a marriage. People live together, like somebody said, just like neighbors, and bad neighbors for that matter, not even good neighbors, because good neighbors talk to each other. Flatmates talk to each other. But in a case where people are married but single or married but lonely, it shows that everything has broken down except that they are cohabiting, even though they have a bond in place.
Thank you, Father. All right, I'm going to give 5 minutes to each of the speakers to speak on your own major topic. And the question is, under what circumstances can a man or woman legitimately deny sex to one spouse? Under what circumstance can you deny your partner sex? Mrs. Martina, I want to start. 5 minutes.
All right. Well, I would start by, first of all, saying maybe health conditions. Health conditions. It could be that there are certain situations that would have happened, and going to the doctor, check and all that. And I know of a case where it was a health condition for that woman, and each time the husband makes love to her, it's always excruciating, but it was a health condition. And so it takes a lot of love to be able to understand and be in that place where you can offer help. Now, but in the midst of all of this, she understands that the husband is human. And, she says, I would let him, even when I know I'm in pain, because I know he wants me. I want him to, but this thing, causes me so much pain. I do a gentle prayer and I allow him. So it takes the two of them coming from a place of love to now able to, actually, understand and have love. So in such a situation, it takes the two to understand, like I said, health condition. Now, mutually agreed abstinence. The husband and the wife, they must agree mutually for whatever reason they choose to. It could be that they have said, for this 1 week, we discussed and we have talked and say, we just want to give up this. It's something that we love so much, but Lord, we want to use this week to offer it up to you in prayer for intentions of this and that. But they agreed mutually. The two of them agreed. It's not something of, I go my way, you go your way, or I decide that I'm doing 10 days fasting, so you just do your own and let me be. I have told you that I'm doing 10 days fasting, so just allow me. You must agree mutually, before any of this can happen. Also, in the course of our talk, we talked about the natural family planning. And so, if the spouses understand their bodies, the man and the woman, they understand their bodies, because it's now the body of the man and the woman, not just the woman's body. It comes to a place of, because my husband knows that, okay, we are avoiding, we don't want to have, we've had this number of children for the time, and then we're holding on. And he understands that at this point, this is my fertile days, these are my infertile days. We have an understanding that during our infertile days, we can have a sexuality. During our fertile days, we are not. It takes, like I said again, the two of us must understand and agree. So in such circumstances, the spouses have agreed, and so for that, they can legitimately abstain from sex for the time because they agree.
Okay, Mr. Timothy, you want to use your 5 minutes now?
There's really little to add to it. I mean, just like you said in the health condition, when a woman is or a man is not in good condition of health, it behoves on the partner to understand that my wife is not in a good state, or I am not in a good state, and should understand that under such circumstances, I would not be able to fulfill my sexual or conjugal obligation. So I'm not expected to act to demand for intercourse from her, and she's also not expected to act to demand from me. Because at that moment, if I deny you, it will not be regarded as a sin. It will not be seen as misuse of my sexuality. I wouldn't have, and you may feel offended, but between me and my God, I have not done anything wrong. Because it's understood, it should be understood that I'm not in a good health condition. But of course, as it relates to mutually agreed absence, we must have agreed, like you said, those of us. Same thing with the knowledge of the natural family planning method. When we both understand it, that's why it's always advisable that when a couple decides to learn the natural family planning, it should be the couple learning it, not just the woman. Most cases, you find out that it's always the woman that is being pushed to say, okay, you go and learn it. That doesn't mean what it is. No. If we both learn it together, the understanding, the level of understanding is equal, and I will appreciate it as much as you do. So whenever we get to the point where there is fertility, I on my own will know that it's a no area. I don't even need to ask. The moment I see the chart, I know. I mean, like someone will say, oh, I'm using family planning method, natural family planning method. But if you're using that method and you don't have a chart, then you are not doing the right thing. Because it's only a chart that can tell you what state you are, what state you are not.
Thank you, Mr. Timothy. Mrs. Ogechi, you have 5 minutes.
Martina, 5 minutes is a lot because Miss Martina and Mr. Timothy have said almost everything. But I'll just add my own 2 cents to it. What she mentioned the medical issues, and medical issues there are several of them. It could be mental illness. It could be somebody that is in coma. It could be somebody that is retarded. It can be somebody who is going through trauma, maybe as a result of abuse. So it could be anything. And if it's any of those things, I don't think anybody going through something like that will be in the right frame of mind for sex, sincerely. And if you're a partner to that kind of person, it's something that you need to understand. You know that this person is not very okay, and in this frame of mind or in this state of health, this person cannot enjoy anything, or even both of you will be frustrated. So I think the best thing is to even find a solution to whatever the issue is, like a lasting solution, or just something that the person is in a good health, because it's only a healthy person that will be able to satisfy you in marriage. So I think health issues, I also think when you agree mutually, it could be for some people, say when they're fasting, they abstain from sex, but it's something that both parties have to agree. It's not something that you just agree on by yourself and say, oh, I'm fasting, I'm not, it will cause issues. So, but if it's something that you mutually agreed on, fine. But if it's something that both of you cannot agree on, then at some point you have to make a compromise. Either somebody go to the other person's camp or somebody comes to the other person. I think those are majorly the two things that you do that will not count as being denying your spouse sex. But any other reason apart from this, I think that would be a sin, because I don't see any other reason if you're healthy, if both of you have not mutually agreed that you abstain for a certain period. I don't see any reason why you should deny each other sex.
Okay, Mr. Callistus, you want to use your 5 minutes now?
Yeah, okay, so I'll just continue at the back of what you had said. When you sent me this question, I actually struggled with it because maybe it's the phrasing of the question. So if you say, is it right to deny your partner sex? The answer is no. And there's no exception to that. The reason being is that when you use the word deny, it connotes that one person is making a decision that affects another person without the person's consent. I will say that again. One person is making a decision that is affecting the other person. Whenever that is the case, it's usually done out of your own self-preservation or selfish reasons. Now, every other speaker has said something that is, should I say, that has been consistent throughout, and that is a mutual decision. Marriage, everything in marriage should be a mutual interaction of both parties. It cannot be one person carrying on and then the other person carrying on. Now, I understand that there's a danger to framing it this way. So, which is why I would also make this additional comment, which also ties to your initial comment about being lonely in marriage. When you say someone is lonely in marriage, sometimes there's the danger for you to elevate your own needs and expectations over the needs and expectations of others. I'll just tie it to my own personal experience. There was a time I felt lonely in my marriage. I felt abandoned. You understand? And the source of that was, when I admitted to myself, was that I wanted more attention from my spouse, and I didn't think I was getting it. And I took it to God in prayer, and I was like, this is a big issue for me. How am I supposed to handle it? You understand? And the answer I got wasn't very encouraging, honestly. Sometimes when God answers your prayers, you'll be like, do you really love me? You understand? But what he said was, whatever you want from your spouse, give to her first. You understand? So you want attention. What kind of attention do you want? And I started thinking, okay, fine. One of the things I would have taught my spouse to do is to watch the same program with me. But then she was into Telemundo, and I couldn't stand it, honestly. So I'll be in the room morning while my wife is downstairs watching Telemundo. So I in answer to God's instruction, I went downstairs and sat down beside her and started asking her, so what is going on here? No matter how boring it was, I tried to stomach it for a while, and eventually there was a response from my own part. So my point is this: always remember that you need to give. Marriage has a giving aspect of it and also a receiving aspect of it. If you feel that you are being abandoned by your spouse, what have you done about it? In the sense that you yourself, have you been attentive towards your spouse, or you've just been in your own cocoon feeling sorry for yourself? Have you initiated intimacy? You understand? Have you asked? Have you had conversations about your feelings with your spouse? Have you communicated that to the other person? You understand? So, and then back to the question of denying sex. Now, if you understand what sex is in marriage, in fact, I don't call it sex, I call it the sacramental act. You understand? Because sex is to marriage what the receiving Holy Communion is to Mass. If you go to Mass and at the end of the day, when it comes to communion, after consecration, you decided to leave, you've not gone for Mass at all. So also, when you come into the marriage commitment or marriage relationship, and then you decide, you understand that this part is not for me, then you should be in a different institution. Now, there's also the danger whenever we talk about this to pretend that it's only women that deny men sex, which is not true. You understand? In many ways, men deny their wives sex. I'm sure one very common one will be even a man's approach to sex. Most times, we don't want to do the work. We just want, short term. Let's just go in, ease ourselves, and come out, without caring for the feedback, without caring for how your spouse feels about it, without communicating, without finding out if she even enjoys it, you understand, or even how she wants it. Sometimes, especially in this pornographic age, one of the mistakes men make is that they are making love to their wife, but they are making love to other women. What do I mean? You think that it's the same, because maybe you were sexually active before you got married. Think that the way you slept with Lucy and co is the same way that you should do it with your wife. And if your wife is not responding the way those other people responded, then there's something wrong with that. That's not true. Actually, because sin damages us in many ways that we don't know. You understand? And one of the fallouts of fornication and sex before marriage is this mistake. Because what should ordinarily have occurred is that you should have gone through a process of knowing your spouse. So what does she like? You understand? What are her preferences? When you're making love to your wife, it's your wife. It's an individual, it's a human being, is a totally different person. She has one fingerprint. There's no other person like her. So whatever you do has to be tailor-fitted to her. And every other thing and every other person has to be left outside of that holy bed that you are in. And if it's something you've been struggling with, then it's something you have to start praying, and start working on yourself to overcome. Because if not, what you're actually doing is also denying your spouse sex, or or love making, or the participation in the sacramental act. So just to go back to my initial statement, there is no reason to deny your spouse. There's no good reason to deny your spouse sex, because the act of denial is a solo act, and no solo act is permitted in marriage. The Bible says your body is no longer your own; it's now the body of your spouse, and vice versa. So you are accountable to your spouse. If you have an issue that you need to communicate to your spouse, and quite frankly, I know it has been said, and I will say it again, because we have been fortunate, my wife and I, to have gone through the contraceptives of modern generation, using condoms, using pills and whatever. And we have also tasted what life is like when you are on natural family planning. And truth be told, there's a level of intimacy. There's a level of intimacy you can attain when you do things the way God has prescribed for you. When you do it the way the church guides you into doing it. There are things I understand more about my wife now that I would never have understood if we had remained on contraceptives. And the communication gets better. Now, some people achieve perfect copulation at the beginning of their marriage. The sex is perfect. Some people do not. Some people even struggle for it for as long as 10, 20, 10, 15 years. That should not be a daunting, should I say, that should not dent your commitment to the marriage. You understand? It's a lie that we have gotten from most romantic movies that says that one of the evidence of true love is that you guys become automatically incompatible in bed. As you touch, she touch, there's response and everything, chemistry. That is a lie, that's a fabrication. You understand? It's not, nothing in love is automatic. It took the Old Testament to get us to the New Testament. So also, your spouse is complex. Your spouse is a complex creature, and you are too. You understand? So if you are not getting it right now, yes, you need to work on your communication. Yes, you need to work on your intimacy. Yes, you need to talk to each other. But no, all hope is not lost. And no, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just part of the process. Marriage is a journey, not a destination. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callistus, for your input. Thank you so much, dear speakers. Father, before I invite you to speak on your own major topic, do you have anything to add to this particular question we just asked the speakers?
I think they've been perfect in their approach to the question. When you talk about denial in the question itself, That's the first thing that you need to look at, because it seems to be the main problem. When you look at the dictionary meaning of deny or denial, it means to refuse to give something requested or desired to someone. So it's a solitary act in a relationship like marriage, to say you are denying someone. Both of you cannot be denying. So it means that you are doing something that is already wrong in the relationship. So will it be a sin to deny your partner sex in marriage? Yes, it is. But there may be reasons to refrain, not to deny, to refrain from the sexual act. And of course, they've mentioned quite a number of such reasons.
Okay, Father. So, Father, it's your turn now to use your 7 minutes. And the big question is it a sin to deny sex to one spouse? That's the big question. 7 minutes, Father.
Okay. Well, I think I just want everybody to turn to the Catechism of the Catholic Church to actually look at this question, in a holistic manner. And in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, from 2360 to 2370, you will find, something very interesting. To open it with 2360, it says that sexuality is ordered to the conjugal love of man and woman. In marriage, the physical intimacy of the spouses becomes a sign and pledge of spiritual communion. Marriage bonds between baptized persons are sanctified by the sacrament. That's very important and key to our understanding this question, whether it's a sin or not. So 2360 is basically saying that marital sex is sanctified. It is holy. It's a sign and pledge of spiritual communion. In 2361, that also continues with the same thing, saying that it is both biological, but also concerns the innermost being of the human person as such, which means that sexual intimacy is not just biological, it is also spiritual. That will also be emphasized in the next paragraph, 2362, where it says that the acts in marriage by which the intimate and chaste union of the spouses takes place are noble and honorable. The truly human performance of these acts fosters the self-giving they signify and enriches the spouses in joy and gratitude. Sexuality is a source of joy and pleasure. So where there is anything like denial, if we go by that language in a marriage, it means there is a problem. The joy is taken away, pleasure is taken away. It's like the couple at the marriage in Cana who had no wine left. So marital sex enhances the spirituality of the spouses. Whether in a time of fast or in novena, it can never be wrong. So the very fact that someone will say, my wife or my husband, I want to fast for 1 week and I don't want to sleep with you during the 1 week, is nonsense. It does not work. It does not show any greater level of spirituality not to sleep with your husband or your wife, because it's a spiritual act in itself. When you go to 2364, it says that the married couple forms the intimate partnership of life and love established by the Creator and governed by His laws. It is rooted in the conjugal covenant, that is, in their irrevocable personal consent. You've given that consent on the day of your marriage. It is irrevocable. And so part of that consent is also the fact that when your spouse says, I need you in bed, for a sexual act, you cannot withhold it. It is irrevocable. In 2368, it also tells us that in conformity with the generosity appropriate to responsible parenthood, this is also very necessary in a marriage. But it didn't take away, some other things. It says that in 2370 that periodic continence, that is the methods of birth regulation based on self-observation and the use of infertile periods, is in conformity with the objective criteria of morality. That means that, yeah, there are times when both parties, when they have good communication, will decide that, okay, for this period, or maybe because this is the fertile moment of the woman, we don't want to go into this act. Yeah, that's allowed. It is moral in a marriage, but it is not a denial. It is not a denial. So is it a sin to deny your spouse that conjugal right? Yes, it is. But if the denial is used loosely, the word to deny is used loosely as not allowing something for certain reasons, open to both parties, then it may not be a sin. We can clarify briefly, because when you look at the Catechism itself in 2362, it talks about just moderation. Just moderation. That means that there are times when, for certain reasons, both parties can say, okay, we don't want to go into it at such a moment. And such reasons will include responsible parenthood, in line with what you find in 2370 of Catechism. Sometimes it may not even be because of disease, where infidelity is established and you need to be sure that your partner is not going to infect you with a disease. You might say, for now, I'm not going into this act unless you go to the hospital for a check and we are sure that you are not carrying any disease, because it's injustice to both parties and to other people who are connected to them if one infects the other with a disease as a result of his or her own fault of being in maybe another relationship, outside of their marriage. Sometimes, people are stressed up, maybe they return from work and the person is not in the right frame of mind. That demands that both parties agree, that they discuss things, and it cannot be a regular excuse. Every day you are tired, every day you are tired, every day you are tired. Then what do you expect your spouse to do? If the time and place is not conducive, somebody has dressed up, the person is going to work, and the other person says, unless you sleep with me, you are not going to work. There will be no food on the table the next day. The person, because he's going to lose his job. That's not a conducive time, and somebody must be responsible enough to know that that is not the right time. Or you are just driving out, maybe on the street, and your spouse says, no, here we must stop and do it. That's madness. You don't just concur because the person wants it in that place. Or you are going for an appointment that is important to you, and the person says, no, I'm in the mood. You may be in the mood, but this is not a conducive time, to be in that mood. So it's important that we understand when you talk about denial, it carries the weight of one person taking a decision that affects not only the self, but also the other person, and often in a very negative way. That is not right. That becomes, a sin. But ordinarily, like the Catechism says, there are times and periods, for just moderation that a couple may decide that it is not the right time to do it. Thank you.
Good evening, Father.
Good evening.
And good evening to all the speakers. Thank you for all the comments that have been said earlier, and thanks to the church for taking this up. But what I've noticed so far is that most of the answers have been tailored towards the younger couples in marriage. What about the older couples? I'm talking of people who are in their 60s, 70s. They too need sex. And I think it would be good if the church can go through the various groups. Maybe the men, because the women, we tell them what we think you should do, make yourself more attractive. But we've had a case of a woman coming around and say, the man just comes and said, open up, I'm ready. Nothing at all, foreplay and things like that. And we've had a kind of the male counterpart trying to talk to the man. And the man's answer is an elderly man was said that after 5 children, I should be expecting my wife to give me this thing. And I don't understand. So there may also be a need to focus on the older group. Maybe to unlearn, relearn, whatever they've learned before, so that their own sexual intimacy will also be more conducive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's like a suggestion. But I want to believe that what the speakers mentioned also apply to every couple. I want to believe that. Right? Speakers, are we on the same page?
Yeah, you are very right. What applies to those who are a few days old in their marriage, in scale marriage.
Okay. Thank you, Father. Okay. Sir Jacob, what's your question, please? You may ask your question now.
Thank you so much, Father Obi. It's not just a question. I wanted to just reaffirm what Father Julius just said, and I posted something on the chat when he made that comment that if you dress up for work and then somebody calls you and come and tells you that you must give him sex or give her sex, that it is madness. He used that word, and I remember in the last discussion we had, those were my exact words about dressing up for going for work, and then somebody coming to intercept you and say, look, it is my conjugal right to come and have sex with you. And I say it's madness. And I think the house took it very unlikely with me. But I'm glad that the priest has used the same dress for work, somebody demanding that you drop your bag and stop going to work and then satisfy his urge or her urge, and then there will be peace in the family. Why I'm saying this is this, because none of the married speakers spoke about this thing. Because you see, the issue of denial is, I want to go a step further than Father Olaiton to say denial is sometimes necessary. Like we say about prayer to God, when God denies you certain things, it may be for your own good. Now, in the house, we call the house a domestic church. And in the house, the General Director of Catechesis says the husband is the chief catechist, and then the wife is the assistant catechist, and the children are the catechumen. Now, it is your duty to correct your spouse and your children. It's your duty. If your child is doing something wrong, it's your duty to correct that child. If your husband is doing something wrong, it's your duty to correct him. Even sometimes you might have to, throw it at him to get his attention, to know that, look, this, what you are doing is wrong. I have to say it. You can kill me, you can do anything you want to do, but I need to say it because of Judgment Day. All the love we profess in marriage, it subsists under the love and commitment to God. The marriage love leads us to a greater love, which is the love of God, which is higher than the marital love. So I need to stress this point, and then it leads me to the next question, the issue of loneliness in marriage. I still posted something on the chat too. Apart from the loneliness, which we might feel, say, okay, the man is neglecting me, the woman is neglecting me, let us not teach ourselves that on earth, somebody is going to be 100% happy. It's not possible. Whether you are celibate or married, complete happiness is not possible in this life. You approach it, you test it, and then you have the fullness in heaven. So, if you are a priest, definitely you will be lonely sometimes. If you are a married man, definitely you are going to be lonely sometimes. So, we must recognize these realities. I'm not saying that you cannot have a happy marriage. But happiness in marriage does not mean heavenly bliss, that you have no sadness at all, you have no challenges at all. No, it's not possible. If any couple enter the marriage bond thinking that, once I get married, I will be having an utopia as far as sex is concerned. I will be having an utopia as far as relationship is concerned. I will be having an utopia as far as attention is concerned. You are heading for the rocks.
and you are going to hit it. But if you are catechized properly and know that there is a deeper hunger, different from the love that any human being can give you, that loneliness will be there if you don't have God in your life.
Okay.
If you don't have that commitment in your life. So, unfortunately, we all assume that we are overnight, everybody is a mature Christian. It's not possible. Well, you see some people who are 20 years old, 30 years old, they are not mature Christians still, and they get married at 25. So they need to be told from the beginning to expect the cross within the marriage. Third point I want to make is if any man or woman mean to please God, it will be easy for you to live with your wife, no matter how bad or good he or she is. Because your commitment is first to God, finding a way to please God day and night, not minding what is happening around you, even in spite of your own self, your own weaknesses, and the weaknesses of your spouse. So in marriage, when these things occur, most of the time, it is the absence of maturity in Christianity, that you have not actually, as Father Kansi will say, committed yourself to pleasing God. If you commit yourself to pleasing God, definitely you are going to tolerate a lot of things in your marriage, and that thing will solve a lot of problems.
Okay, thank you.
Callistus was talking about the natural family planning, that it is important for both couples to read it together. Yes, it is. Those times the ideal situation, but most of the time things are not ideal. Things are not ideal in the sense that one partner may not even be interested, might not even see the need for it. In my case, personal example, I studied the natural family planning method to the extent that I became a teacher in it. I started teaching it because I wanted to use it, and I used it. My first son, on my own, I calculated the day that I expect him to be born, almost to 2 days, because I was committed to the natural family planning way. I was doing the chatting. 20, 30 years, I was doing the chatting. So the commitment is not just about you having a good life. It's about doing what God has commanded you to do and submitting yourself to God.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. Mrs. Israeli, your hand is off.
Good evening, fathers, and thank you to our speakers. I think I was just going to speak to the definition of madness when a woman or a man, for that matter, asks for sex just as you're about to do something very important. I want to bring my own experience of counseling. When a couple in marriage come up with this kind of unusual request, it is a deep cry for something that is missing in their marriage. And so they begin to ask for things irrationally, just hoping that something would work out. And so what I would say, if anyone is in that situation, would be, okay, sweetheart, hold her, hug her. If it's a man, follow him, hold his hand. Even if you like, try and take his briefcase with him and say, you know what? When you come back this evening, I would give you the best time ever of your life. That attention, that's it. So it's not to dismiss that person as if the person is mad. Because to be truthful, that person is being unreasonable and most likely knows it. But there is a problem. The woman is not, or the man asking for sex at that time, he's not stupid. But there is a cry from the soul. And usually there are times when a woman has tried to talk to her husband, he won't hear. A man has tried to explain something, she won't hear. So she just makes one demand, or he makes one demand. And so when these madnesses occur in marriage, it is an invitation to look into it and find out what's wrong with this couple. Why are they behaving mad? What is it that's there? So that's what I would say, that any behavior we call mad in marriage, I think ought to be explored. And if anyone is here that is listening, maybe you consider that your spouse or your girlfriend that you are purposefully dating for marriage has been acting mad, check for yourself what's missing. What is it that you need to do or need to add? That was just what I was going to say. Then I think somebody asked about what's the meaning of maturity. And maturity, to be honest, and this is what I think Father mentioned maturity, and Mr. Audu talked about, we don't achieve this harmony in a day. We marry in our 20s or 30s. We've never married before. And it is indeed a journey. And that journey is actually to the wedding banquet. We are practicing. So we need to start teaching the meaning of the sacrament of matrimony. Now, the meaning of the sacrament of matrimony is that it equips us to love Christ through our spouses. And I realized that when I got to understand that early on in my marriage, I changed my own prayer. I don't pray anymore, oh, may I love my husband, or let my husband love me. I ask God, please help me to love my husband with the love with which you love him. Give me the love with which you love him, that I may love him. And so it became a totally different thing. My mindset was removed from, oh, he has to love me. I think Callisto says something about, are you loving, are you doing, you want attention, are you doing something? And for me, it was that question. You want attention, you want love. Are you loving this person as the person wants to be loved? How do I know how the person wants to be loved? But there is a pledge. There's a pledge from the sacrament of matrimony that God will give me everything I need to do his will. And one of it is to give me that love, his love, which he communicates to me in baptism, Holy Eucharist, all the sacraments, and in particular in matrimony. And so I am enabled to do it. I just want to encourage us as married people. Through the sacrament of matrimony, we receive every grace we need to love as God wants us to love. And that takes me to the last question we haven't answered. Older couples, how do they have sex? They should. At no age should sexual intercourse be stopped. Oh, we have finished having our children. Oh, we don't. This is the only thing you do with this person that you do with no other person. If you have been chaste, as the church requires that you do. And therefore, from age 50, there is a reduction of male libido. And there is an increase of female libido, which creates an imbalance. From age 50, a man who is lucky not to have that reduction of libido has just entered the Christmas season of having sexual intercourse with his 50-year-old wife and him in his 50s or 60s. However, it is also the age of illness. Most men who have worked very hard and women sort of experience high blood pressure. But high blood pressure for men actually reduces libido, and many wives don't understand it, especially the medication that you're given for it. So women need to be taught that sexual intercourse sometimes does not have to be penetrative. The Bible says they were naked and not ashamed. The key thing is being naked, holding each other in that nakedness, saying, I am still ready to have you, but I know you're going through some difficulty. It doesn't matter. I love you anyhow. This is very important, especially for men experiencing erectile dysfunction. And I'm shy and ashamed to say that. I have counseled many men who dare not tell their wives that they can't do it anymore. So they pretend. They go out, come back late, and the wife is saying he's following women. They're not. He's not able to come back and say, I am losing my manhood. That's how they feel it. And I say to them, how can your penis be the definition of who you are? How can it be? So we have all these cultural inhibitions and cultural understandings that make it such that men feel bad to tell their wives that, you know what, my libido is coming down. We need to see what we can do about having sex. It's a discussion that must be held. And so one thing make your spouse, women don't suffer those kinds of things, except women who have lupus. And even talking to women who have lupus on how to manage, lupus is a very strange disease. So even in that situation, the couples are helped and the men understand at that time. I've seen some really, really noble men whose wives, there's a woman, you can't touch her and she's screaming. Every part of her body is hurting. And this particular woman gave a testimony that she noticed that her husband in his 50s, but still his libido was high. But for 6 months, no sexual intercourse in the house. And so one day she just said to her husband, we're going to have this sex because we have been trained that it is important we have it. I know my body is paining me, but we're going to have it. And the husband, so happy that she's agreeing, this is a real life story, so happy that she's agreeing, decided, okay, oh, thank God she's, she will bear the pain. She took her pain relievers. Lupus pain is beyond pain relievers, but she took anyway. And while they were having sexual intercourse, the man said that he noticed his wife wincing with pain, but continuing and acting as if she didn't have any pain at all. He said on that day he swore to God that if this is love, this is how he wants to love his wife in return. Can you just imagine that? He was telling this testimony at a lupus training that we gave. So there are noble people, there are saints on earth. Marriage, the sacrament of matrimony makes us saints. And the first thing we have to do is manage the thing that spoils it, which is the wrong understanding of our sexuality. Thank you.
Thank you, ma. Thank you, ma. Mr. Callistus, your hand is up. You want to say something? Or?
Yes. Thank you. Although it's always difficult following after Mrs. Iswili. But I wanted to attempt the question that was asked by Innocence. I think I understood the question, and I wanted to attempt it. The question was around the virgins who struggle in their sexual encounter. First of all, I think it's important we disabuse ourselves from some of the fallacies that are very common in our generation. Marriage is designed by God for virgins. Marriage is designed by God for virgins. And I know when I say virgins now, we're not thinking just about the sexual aspect of it. But think about it. Altar. Are you familiar with keeping? Which of the promises you make on that altar the day you're getting married, which of them do you have experience with? Better for worse, for richer, for poor. Have you practiced it before getting married? Is there any other thing that gives you that experience or that opportunity to practice? No. You understand? The virgin mindset is one that comes in just like Abraham, just like the great heroes in the Bible, coming with the faith that God, I don't know where this journey is leading, but I know that with you we'll get to the destination because you are with us. I would refer us to Tobit. Tobit chapter 3, I think, the story of Tobias and Sarah. Whenever we as husband and wife, whenever we approach marriage with this mindset that God, these promises that we are making to each other, this task that we are approaching together, not only are we ignorant of how to fulfill it, but we might even be incapable of fulfilling it. Please come with us along this journey. I think it will end up the way God has ordained it for it to end up. You understand? So please disabuse yours, because this is the fear they put into us. How would you know it will work? Why don't you try it before you get married? If your marriage cannot succeed without a total trust in God, that's number one. The second point I wanted to make is, like Mrs. William said, marriage is to make us sin. Very few of us come into marriage as saints, but the intention is that when we go through this hospital, you understand, when we pass through this fire or through this journey, through this education, will come out as saints. What does that mean? It means that marriage is tailored to make us like Christ, which means that we can always go to Christ for a template on how to behave in marriage. And for me, one of the templates I've been meditating upon is the agony in the garden. We always say that the crucifixion was Christ consummating his relationship with his church. If that is the case, that means the agony in the garden was the beginning of the foreplay. And how did it start? It started with Christ saying, this commitment, I'm tired though. I've been taking care of the children. I don't think I can continue like this. Please, if it's your will, take this away from me. But let your will be done. Now, two things are happening there, which are of interest to me. Number one is, there was a level of confidence and comfort. You understand? Christ must have felt with his Father that he was willing to expose that level of vulnerability to him. You know, so when for some reasons we cannot fulfill our own part in the marriage, and it shouldn't just be about sex. I know sex is like the pinnacle of it all, but there are other things. There are some daily routines that you might be struggling with meeting up. You understand? The goal is to eventually get to the point where you are comfortable enough to express these vulnerabilities to your spouse and say, "Still, this is what I am struggling with. Please help me. If there's any way you can help me." You understand? And of course, the story will go that an angel came to strengthen him. There was a feedback. You understand? When your spouse is in a vulnerable position, what kind of feedback do you render? Do you prioritize your own feelings over and above hers or his? You understand? Oh, let's go ahead. Come on, I'm suffering too now. No. You understand? You have to be able to lift each other up whenever one is weak. You have to be able to see from the other side. Don't forget that for you to truly love, it means that you are putting yourself in the position of the other party. So this idea of me, I'm tired, I'm not a robot. You understand? That I am tired is not a sin. But saying you're not a robot, nobody wanted to get married to a robot. That's why we married you in the first place now. You're a human being. So as a human being, when you are tired and you can't meet up, what you should do is communicate it in a humane way. You understand? Let us know what you are struggling with, and let's see how we can help each other. You understand? And once again, see, we are all in different stages of this journey. And the fact that we are in different stages of this journey does not mean, number one, that getting to the finish line is impossible. We should always remember that the ideal is the goal. And the excuses we make are just excuses. We must be committed to meeting the goal. That is, that they may be one as I and my Father are one. The goal of total intimacy, so that when we come on the day of judgment, when God is talking, in fact, it's very difficult to tell between who is talking to, whether it's you or your spouse. That is the goal. The goal is to achieve a perfect union. Whether we stumble on the way is part of the journey. But we must always remember that it's achievable because God is on our side and is willing to work with us to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callistus. I take that as your closing remark. Okay, there's one question here. Church channels, please ask your question before I go to the other speakers. Uche, please ask your question. Church channels, please ask your question. Are you there? Ask your question.
Good evening, Father.
Good evening.
Yeah, please, can you hear me?
Go on.
All right. Okay. We are meant to understand that some women commercialize their body in such a way that they seem to demand. I mean, at the point of say they have to start making demands. You know, maybe if the husband did not fulfill that, I mean, what they are demanding for, more or less like a demand and supply. You know, if you're not able to get what they want, they seem to deny their husband's sex. I want to put this question to, I'm putting this question to Mrs. Isweli. What would be your advice to any couple who is doing such? Thank you.
Are you there, ma? Okay, any of the speakers can respond to that question, please.
Okay.
Please. Any of you can respond, please.
And that is classified as a woman who is prostituting within marriage. When you start to demand for money or material things as a condition for sexual intercourse within the marriage, it is the same as a woman who is prostituting on the street. The only thing that you are prostituting within marriage is definitely unacceptable. Just like it is for prostitution, it could be considered as a sin. Because within your marriage, instead of giving the man what is expected of you to meet your conjugal obligation, you choose to make demand of the man because you feel that, he wants it. So he wants to respect his marital commitment of not being promiscuous. So he will stay within the marriage. And because I know he's faithful to his marriage, that I want to obtain some financial benefit from it before I meet my own part of the obligation. So I'm considered as prostitution within marriage, and it's not acceptable.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all.
I'm sorry, I heard your question, but I couldn't unmute myself. My phone got stuck. But
okay.
Tim has done a good job.
You want to add something to it?
I think I'll go with what he has.
Okay. Thank you, ma. Any other question? I think that's all. Okay, we now have your closing remarks. Mrs. Martina, please give your closing remark.
Okay, so in all, we have heard, and I just wanted to say one thing that in the midst of all we have talked about today, I've heard lots about sometimes when a man is tired, when the woman is tired, and all that. And I want to share this, that I remember one day, and that day I know for sure that I was extremely tired. We went somewhere, myself and my husband, and then we're getting back home. Like we say, he had made the moves and all that, but I knew I was tired. But there's one thing he did. Even in the midst of all that, he took me, we went somewhere, came back, he took me to the salon, waited for me. I wait for you. He waited for me. We went back home and all that. I tell you, yes, I was very tired, but the loving acts and the loving way in which he treated me and, all of that gave me strength. Let me put it back. So I'll call it spiritual strength now. So you see how, even in times of saying you're tired like this, when love, comes into play, it brings in something so strong that you yourself, you can make at what love can do. So I say that in everything, love conquers a whole lot in our relation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Timothy, you want to give your remark? Mr. Timothy, please.
Okay. So she just said it. Yes, madam. She just ended by saying that love conquers it all. Just like Valerie said earlier, and the fact that we all have the goal. Marriage is our channel towards our eternal goal, which is heaven. And we continue on the journey believing that God will lead us home safely. So as we continue to express our love to each other in marriage, with the hope that that love which we express as a sign of our love for God and our neighbor in everything that we do, that God will, in His infinite mercy, will lead us home safely and will be and unite with Him in His heavenly kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mrs. Ogechi, please, your remark.
Father, closing remark. I'll just simply say that for your marriage to be successful, you need God on the journey and your partner, and you both have to work together with the help of God. God has to be at the center of every marriage for it to be successful and for you to be able to overcome whatever challenges you have in your marriage.
Okay.
Closing remark.
Thank you. Callistus, I'm sure you must have given yours, or you have anything to say?
No, I think I was sticking my previous...
Okay, thank you. Okay, before I call on Father to give his closing remark, I can see Father Leonard here. I want to welcome the fathers here and the Reverend Sisters who have joined us today. Thank you for your presence. I don't know if you have anything to say before I call on Father to give his closing remark. Any of the priests here or Reverend Sisters wish to say something before we end the program, please.
Yeah, just briefly, I think it's more of a sentiment of gratitude to you and to all those who have participated in the session this evening, especially the couples who have, with their own experience, which makes a difference. You know, when you are speaking from experience, it's different from when we are speaking from what you heard or what you read. So the knowledge produced from personal experience and from studies is very, very, very profound. So a lot of gratitude to you all for your generosity with your experience and with all. It's a sign of hope that we still have many wonderful couples in the church and in the society. So for those who are scared of getting married because they feel it's no longer doable, this is a very good sign. The gospel of the family, we need to keep insisting on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Father Leonard, for that input. Any other person, any other person, the priests and Reverend Sisters here? Okay. All right. Father, before I welcome you to give your closing remark, when Mr. Callistus was giving his presentation, he said, sex is to marriage what Mass is to Holy Communion. Do you agree with that?
It's not the language. It is the meaning of what he's saying. He's only comparing one with the other. It does not mean that it replaces communion at Mass. But he's saying when someone goes to Mass and the person walks out at the time of communion without receiving Holy Communion, it means that the highest point of that sacrifice, at the highest point of that sacrifice, that individual did not participate. And it says that it's the same thing with marriage, that in a marriage, if you abandon the sexual act, it means that the highest point of that relationship, even the Catechism says to us now that it is not just the biological aspect of it, it's also a spiritual thing. So if that is missing in a marriage, there is a problem. So he's not saying that it replaces communion, no, but he's comparing, the two, situations.
Thank you, Father. I agree with you, and I agree with Mr. Callistus. I guess we're just stressing the importance of sex in marriage. Thank you, Father, for the input and for the contribution. Okay, Father, you may not give your closing remark.
Yeah, well, I don't think I have much to say anymore. I want to thank Mrs. Isueli, in the way she responded to the madness that I mentioned. When I use the word madness, I was using it in relation with someone who is going out and says to the spouse, we have to stop our car here and have sex on the road. You know, and when I use the word madness in that situation, it is to mean an extremely foolish behavior or a state of wild or chaotic activity. So, and like Mrs. Iseli said, when you see such madness in people, it means that something is missing, that they're trying to fill in at such a moment. So, for me, it's just important for all those who are married to understand that sex in marriage is never a sin. It's one of the ends, you know, one of the reasons why you're in that marriage, because for both the unitive act and also for procreation, the sexual act is important. So don't think that you are doing your spouse a favor. No, it's a part of your relationship, something you should cherish in that relationship. And it's something that should lead both of you, you know, to Christ, like it's also been echoed by the other speakers. Thank you very much, and thanks to all those who have participated at this session.
Thank you, Father.